to move the class now to Wednesdays. That is more appropriate for me. So let it be God, my God, and God of my ancestors, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. Let it be His will. Let it be your will that the study of Torah that we intend to do maybe as you want us to understand it. May there be no errors that creep into it. Amen. Can you hear us? So?
Amen.
Okay. So parashat Pinchas. Parashat Pinchas is really a continuation of last week's parasha theme itself. Okay. So let's quickly look at the summary. Would somebody like to volunteer to read?
You want me to read, Rabbi?
Okay, I'll do it. Somebody, Ashley, you want to read?
Yeah, you want me to read? I'll read.
Yeah, please do. You go ahead.
Pinchas is rewarded with a pact of peace and eternal priesthood for killing the Israelites and the Midianite woman.
Israelite. One.
Israelite and the Midianite woman. Israel is instructed to fight a war against the Midianites. A second census is taken, and the Canaanites' land that would be won in the future was to be distributed as per the listed names. The daughters of
Zelophehad. Yeah.
Zelophehad request to receive a property inheritance. Since they lost their father en route and did not have a brother, Hashem accepts the request and makes it a law that in the absence of brothers, the woman would inherit their ancestral property. Moshe is asked to ascend Mountain Abraham to see the promised land.
Sorry about that.
That he would not be allowed into, and he requests Hashem to select a leader for the people. Joshua is chosen to be Moses' successor. The sacrificial rituals for daily sacrifices, Sabbaths, Rosh Hodesh, and all festivals occasions is described in detail.
So very short parasha, but it is quite lengthy because it has the second census and all the numbers in the census. Last year we had gone into the details of that. So that takes a lot of volume. And then again, the sacrificial rituals take a lot of volume. It goes into the details of all the rituals. During every festival, whenever we are reading from the Torah, we are reading from Parashat Pinchas, really, for that particular festival's, what we would say, ritualistic or sacrificial input that we read from the Torah on that particular day is read from Parashat Pinchas. So we have all the festivals enlisted. That also is very lengthy. So the parasha is not short, but we will focus on some ideas that we may have even discussed last year, but may get into a little more of details this time. Okay. So as I said, Parashat Pinchas is a continuation of what happened at the end of parasha, last week's parasha, which was parashat. What? Is that right? My memory should serve me correctly. Chukat, yeah. Let's move on. So this chapter, Numbers chapter 25 is really in Parashat Chukat. So we will just review what happens over there. So we will have a continuity sort of to understand what's happening in the beginning of our parasha. While Israel was staying at Shittim, the people profaned themselves by licentiousness with the Moabite woman, who invited the people to sacrifice for their God. The people partook of them, that means the sacrifice, and worshipped that God. Thus, Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, and the Lord was incensed with Israel. The Lord said to Moses, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before the Lord, so that the Lord's wrath may turn away from Israel. So Moses said to Israel's officials, each of you slay those of his men who attach themselves to Baal Peor. Just then, one of the Israelites came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions in the sight of Moses and of the whole Israelite community, who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aharon the priest, saw this, he left the assembly, and taking a spear in his hand, he followed the Israelite into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. Those who died of the plague numbered 24,000. So this is what happens in last week's parasha end. Okay, so just let us look at it in a little bit of more. We spoke about this last time. We said that Bilam came to curse Israel. He was unable to curse Israel because God stopped him, and he prophesied all the berachot instead of cursing. But as he left from other section in the Torah, we know that he gave them bad advice, and the advice was that Israel is a holy people, and the only way you can hurt Israel is by making them bringing anger against them from God, right? So you will have to find a way how you can get God angry with them, because they have a close relationship with God. And he informed them that Israel's God hates immorality, and if you make these people go astray and become immoral, then God will get angry with them, and you don't need to punish them. They will get punished automatically. So that is the background that we discussed last time. Here what happens, the king of Moab was Bilam, right? Bilam, while Israel was staying at Shittim, the people profaned themselves by licentiousness with the Moabite woman. These Moabite women were asked to go and lure the Israelites, who invited the people to sacrifice for the gods. So the first point was to lure them to having relationship with them. The second point was to bring them to sacrifice for their God. The people partook of them and worshipped that God. So that they will be able to seduce these women. The women were demanding that they worship the God, Baal Peor. And that's what they did, because they lusted after the woman. And God got angry. Thus Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, and Lord was incensed with Israel. The Lord said to Moses, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before the Lord, so that the Lord's wrath may turn away from Israel. According to oral tradition, one of the ways that you worship Baal Peor was by having a relationship in front of it. That is how that God was worshipped. And it is not very far from other traditions. Okay, have you heard of Devdasis in India? South India, there is a whole prostitution cult called Devdasis. Why are they called Devdasis? Because that whole ceremony is on the same lines like these guys practice. The worship of that particular god is by having relations with the Devdasi, with that prostitute who was the cultic prostitute of that temple. Okay. So this is something that was practiced not only here in the Moabite as well as Midianite communities probably, but all over the world, other parts of the world also practice this. So it would be interesting to go into the thinking over here and understand how Judaism basically reforms this practices or this hedonistic cults and brings sense into the psyche of humanity. Because only over the period of the last 3,000 years, now 3,300 years after the Torah, we see that religion is very much influenced by ideas which are more moral and more sacred. But once upon a time, all that was there was a lot of overlap. And I mean, this would be a good starting point to understand what exactly is being worshipped or what exactly is being achieved by such practices. Okay. Who has heard of Osho? Rajneesh. Who hasn't? Right? In India, everybody has heard of Osho. Right?
Famous man.
One of his, I mean, even Indians sort of excommunicated him because he went all extreme to use sex as a means towards enlightenment. If anybody knows about it, I'll just give you an idea. His principle was that enlightenment needs a lot of energy, right? To get enlightened, you need a lot of energy. The problem is our energy is all locked into the mind and its faculties, and somehow you need to go beyond. So yoga and different traditions in India try to give you that input of energy to intensify the voltage in your system to bring you to enlightenment. So Osho very openly prescribed to using sex as a means to enhance your voltage, right? And in fact, there is a lot of truth to it. The problem is, the downside of it is when you share strangers as your partners, when you when you involve, there are other very big, the fact that it has this intensity and it has this potentiality, Torah recognizes that it has to be practiced in a very positive way, in a very, what we call kadosh, in a holy way. The marriage ceremony in Judaism is called kiddushin. The woman is made holy for her husband. That kiddushin was from the word kadosh, right? So why is our tradition? Why does it say that when a man shares his bed with his wife, the Shekhinah dwells over there? It is the same principle, because there is something that can be achieved at the moment when you are with your beloved and use the energy, but it has to be in a certain framework. Just taking that concept and using it hedonistically is what all the pagan communities were doing. And once we received the Torah, we really emulated the relationship between Hakadosh Baruch Hu and Am Israel. And the relationship between Hakadosh Baruch Hu and Am Israel is like a husband and a wife. We serve God as Am Israel, we serve God as if we are his partner. And God is very demanding of us being very, what is the word? Pramanik. What would be that in English towards him? Be very, very fair and
just.
Just? No. Any other words?
Practical.
To be only with him, not to do idol worship, not to go to other gods. Right? It is as if a woman is
Dedicated.
Dedicated. Yes.
Loyal.
Yes. Loyal. Correct. So that relationship with, when we started a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we were like his wives. The wife. Am Israel was his wife. And that is the same idea emulated between a husband and a wife in their relationship. So the relationship per se becomes sacred. Okay, that concept is really described in detail by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who in some of his parashat Shavua and some of his books brings this whole idea that Israel, or this concept of being loyal to your husband and having a monogamous relationship is equated to the relationship between Am Israel and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why, and from there it receives its holiness. Anyway, we can go into a little more details because this is just one aspect of holiness. I would like to share with you an idea that I learned from my friend and cousin. My cousin Levana, her husband, Rabbi Shlomo Baron, Rabbi Michael Baron. In one of his books, he has written an amazing book called Song of the Creator. And in that book, he shows how the beginning of Torah, say if you begin Torah from Genesis, Bereshit, right? And so the Bereshit first chapter is going to align itself with Devarim, Deuteronomy, last chapter. And as you go in from Bereshit and as you read, how do you say, from the back end of the Torah, the whole Torah sort of overlaps and has relationships with each other. But in that, he brings a very good idea in that book, in the footnote, and he talks about he's also a authority on the Rambam and Rambam's Mishneh Torah. So Rambam's Mishneh Torah is a compilation of all the halachot, 613 halachot, and details of how those halachot have to be followed. So that is what Mishneh Torah is, and it has so many sections in it. One of the book is called the Book of Holiness. Okay, so Sefer Kedusha, Sefer Kedusha. In Sefer Kedusha, there are 3 sections. The first section is Hilchot Isur Ebiyah. Hilchot is laws of prohibited sexual relations. Hilchot Isur Ebiyah. Second is Hilchot Ma'achalot Asurot. laws of forbidden foods. And third is Hilchot Shechita, laws of slaughter. And he brings that all under holiness. The question is, why bring these ideas? Why slaughter? How to slaughter an animal? How to do a proper Shechita? Why is that under Hilchot Kedusha, the laws of being holy? Or why eating prohibited foods, the whole laws of kashrut, why do they come under the section of Hilchot Kedusha? That is the question we have to ask ourselves. And what he says very rightly is that I'm going to read what he says. The Torah view on holiness. The Torah is the middle path between the ascetic view of holiness, in which one is to shun the physical world and its pleasures, which are viewed as evil, and hedonism. Hashem not only desires that we live in, partake of, and enjoy the physical world, but through holiness, so that we will elevate ourselves above the animals while preserving and improving the world. It should therefore come as no surprise that Torah laws concerning holiness are exclusively in the context of activities that humans share with animals, with whom and how to engage in physical intimacy. This is something animals do, and humans also share that quality. That's why this is an area which can be infused with holiness. Second, what we eat. Animals need to eat. We need to eat. How do we eat can be infused with holiness. And third, the way we slaughter meat for food, or how animals slaughter their food. How do they kill their food? How do they eat? Similarly, we can infuse that area with Kedusha, because the idea of Kedusha from here is that it is how we use our base instincts and raise it up. That is the whole concept. So the base instincts, the animal instincts in us are not shunned. They are not bad. They are not evil. They are there so that we will be able to use them, channelize them, and infuse them with holiness, and use them towards, you can say, serving Hakadosh Baruch Hu, or towards the concept of infusing or bringing light into this world by using these energies. These are very base energies. If we bring holiness into that activity, what we do is we make this world a more holy place. We bring the Shekhinah down on our physical level, on our physical area. I hope till here, am I being clear, or is it too? Someone needs to answer me. Okay, any questions up to here?
Okay, I think.
Yeah. Any questions? Please, we'll give another 10 seconds. Please unmute yourself and ask me if you have any doubts, questions, something unclear, and then we will move on. Okay, I guess we are good. So this is what exactly is happening over here. Am Israel, although Am Israel very clear that they worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they have got the Torah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but over here there may be two reasons that they can go astray. One, because they understand that all this idol worship business, anyway, it doesn't hold any water. So what is the big deal if I sit in front of an idol and eat it as long as I'm getting the girl? So they're thinking it's not important. What does it matter? And then because of that, because they regard it as it is not valuable and has no value by itself, they can go ahead and they may have gone ahead and done it. Or maybe they are at a level where they see this as I explained. They see this is a okay, there is this energy existing, and there is this channel existing, and they call this channel Balpe, or they call this particular aspect of creation godly, and define it as Balpe. But what does it mean? It is okay. From our understanding, they are all part of unity. We understand God. God also created animals. God also created human beings. God also created these base instincts. So what's the big deal? As long as we are clear about our intentions, we understand that this is only a part of God. God is a big unity, and this is part of God. So as long as I'm getting uh, the benefit of sleeping with this lady, what does it matter that I go and sit in this temple? I don't really care for it. But no, over here there is a very big misunderstanding. A misunderstanding in terms of the minute we sort of divide Hakadosh Baruch Hu's energies. The fact that energy is channelized and divided, that itself is Avodah Zarah. You cannot come into the gate by doing it. That itself, although your understanding may be very clear that yes, this is one aspect of God, that is one aspect of God. God is mercy, God is also power, God is also fertility, all kinds of rituals around these things. But once you decide to enter through one channel, that is forbidden according to the Torah, because you just won't be able to reach the unity like that. Your mind will be attached to this reality, and it will make your reality, or it will create your reality through that lens, sort of. So it is forbidden for us once we understand what is Hakadosh Baruch Hu and how he has to be served. And that's why Hakadosh Baruch Hu repeats all the festivals and their sacrifices in this parashas, to be very clear that this is the only way you serve me. There are no other byways. There are no options, and there are no. You just cannot. There is no side channel available to you. Just because you understand that, yeah, that is also a part of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, it doesn't make it available. Okay, so this is also a learning experience for Am Israel, because Am Israel is, they have been weaned away from the traditions of Egypt on one hand, and they have come to a very high level of relationship with the Shekhinah. They are dwelling with the Shekhinah. But there are things that must have been amorphous, must have been very gray area at that time, because if not only at that time, there was a period I will show you, and it may be related to what happens later in our parasha, that and there are incidences that show that there was a little bit of a problem in our understanding of what Avodah Zarah's role was and why we had to abhor it. Okay? But that is really how I understand that they must have gone astray. Right? The one example that comes to my mind is Shlomo HaMelech. King Solomon was the wisest of all kings, wisest of all men on this planet. And King Solomon, one of the biggest downfalls of King Solomon was that he built temples for his non-Jewish wives. And he gets a lot of criticism. And in fact, Hakadosh Baruch says, I am going to punish you for this, but not in your lifetime, but from your children's generation, I'm going to take away the kingship of Am Israel from you, divide it up, only you will be the king of Yehuda. But that is the reason why, because he also in his wisdom thought, okay, all these things are small channels of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they are trying to divide God into different aspects and play around with him. Big deal, but we understand because he is wise, because he is knowing, he understands. Okay, so there is this and there is that, and there are different aspects to it. So okay, but it's not okay. The minute he did that, he lost his monarchy, right? That's where is the root of it? It is in your mind. You think that you have understood, but it is not so. You can never know how breaking that aspect and worshipping God through one particular attribute that he has is detrimental to your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch. Okay, so let us move on. So here you have the last line, second last line. Thus Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, and Lord was incensed with Israel. The Lord said to Moses, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before the Lord, so that the Lord's wrath may turn away from Israel. Impaled. So all you have to give them, execute them, capital punishment, and then impale them. Hang them, sort of. So Moses said to Israel's officials, each of you slay those of his men who attached themselves to Baal Peor. You all will remember there were all these officers that Moshe Rabbeinu had divided the whole thing for 10, for hundreds, for thousands, right? So according to this, everyone was supposed to pinpoint to those who were responsible, and they were supposed to be punished. Why? Just then, because God said, I'm going to now bring a plague. If this is not done, those who are responsible will not be punished, then I'm going to bring a plague. Just then one of the Israelites came and brought a Midianite woman over his companions. And here again, you have Saul's last time's question. Midianite woman. We were talking of Moab doing this whole business of sending prostitutes. And suddenly you have Midian here, this Midianite woman, to his companions in the sight of Moses. So there are a few problems over here, how it is written. Vehine ish mibene Israel. Ba. So who is the Ish? We don't know, but Ish means like an important person. Vayakrev el Echav. And he came closer to his brothers. Right? He brought over to his companions. That's how it is being translated. Et hamidianit le'ene Moshe, in front of Moses. Ve'ul ene kol adad ben Israel. So in front of the congregation of Israel, in front of Moses, he sort of openly brought this woman over to his companions. That's a little weird. Why over to your companions? You're just going to have an orgy? What is exactly happening over here? Or did you want to marry her? So why that word El Echav? That's a little problematic. Anyway, she was a Midianite woman over to his community in the sight of Moses and of the whole Israelite community, who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. They were weeping because they know that Hashem is now going to punish them. And these guys are not listening and they want to have a good time. And it is going to hurt Am Israel, because not those guys who are running around with these ladies are going to get punished. Am Israel is going to, the plague happens and thousands of people from the whole community are going to fall dead. When Pinchas, son of Elazar, son of Aharon the priest, so this is Aharon's grandson, son of Elazar, saw this, he left the assembly and taking a spear in his hand, he followed the Israelites into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. Those who died of the plague numbered 24,000. Already the plague had started, 24,000 had died because of what Pinchas did. He killed only 2 people, but the plague stopped. Instead of all the people were to be impaled, we just read that God said, impale all those who are responsible, and then the plague will stop. Whatever he did, stopped the plague with just killing 2 people. So first of all, the question that we need to ask is, why is that? Secondly, this is the beginning of our parasha, this week's parasha. Let's read ahead and then I'll ask the questions. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, has turned back my wrath from the Israelites by displaying among them his passion for me, so that I did not wipe out Israelite people in my passion. Say therefore, I grant him my pact of peace. It shall be for him and his descendants after him a pact of priesthood for all time, because he took impassioned action for his God, thus making expiation for the Israelites. Okay, let's take it till here. Pinchas decides to do, at the spur of the moment, an act which is not heard of. He takes a spear, goes and kills this guy, kills the woman with him, right? Murder is rewarded according to the Torah. Not only murder, but you also see he was, what is that word passion for? What was this passion? Pinchas ben Aaron HaKohen Heshivet Hamati. Hamati means my anger. Me'al Bnei Israel. He brought back my wrath. Bekano et kinati betocham. Because he displayed passion for me. Kin'ah. Zealousness. So, in his anger, God is angry. Pinchas is angry because this guy brings this lady from Midian, and in his anger, he kills. There are 2 problems now. Not only he kills, murder, but also anger, which is not a very positive midah, positive quality, personality trait, but it is rewarded here in Pinchas. And the reward, we will look at the reward also, because there's a little bit of ambiguity about the reward. I shall grant him my pact of peace. What is God's pact of peace? Maybe then what the Torah is saying is explaining that idea. It shall be for him and his descendants after him a pact of priesthood. So what? He was not a priest. Why was he not a priest? He was a son of Aaron and Eleazar Kohen. So he was automatically priest, we would think. But there are some traditions, the oral tradition really, the Hachamim say that no, he was not a priest, because only after that point when Aaron and Eleazar were taken into priesthood, the children that would be born to them would become priests. But he was born to them before they were taken into priesthood, and that's why he was not a priest. He was just a Levite. Okay? That is our oral tradition. That's how it understands that at this point, even this son, grandson of Aaron, this son of Eleazar, was sucked into priesthood. He got the priesthood, and the priesthood is really my pact of peace. It shall be for him and his descendants after him a pact of priesthood for all time, because he took impassioned action for his God, thus making expiation for the Israelites. But I have a different read about it. But let's take the more important questions first, and then I will tell you a side point about how I think this works. Because in my understanding, Aaron and his sons and his grandsons all became priests, and they were all they were all inducted in the priesthood, although their names were not mentioned there, right? But it says Aaron and sons, and sons also means grandsons, according to me. But we'll come back to that. Let's ask the more important questions. Anger and murder, suddenly how do they become positive? How is it that God is giving him credit and making a pact with Pinchas, which is based on his actions over here? Why not pull these guys out? Why not bring them to court? Why not give them a proper trial? And then if they are wanting, maybe he just bought this woman, he was not going to, really have relations with him, or maybe he just wanted to marry her later. And then she was, who knows, who has listened to his side of the story? Is it okay to murder him like that? All these questions. How do we make sense of it? Any answers? Guys, wake up. Yes.
Maybe I'll attempt to answer.
Yes, thank you, David.
I think this Israelite actually did an act after, it was announced that there would be anger is there and there is a punishment. So, after that is done, then this person is acting. So, he knows the implications of what is wrong, and having known that, again, it's a deliberate violation again. And maybe therefore it is treated as a outlier case and addressed accordingly. Maybe, I don't know.
Good, very good. So you are taking the second aspect of murder. When was murder permitted? It was not permitted. But in this case, as you say, the Lord said to Moses, last line, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled. So there is a sentence on them already. Like David is saying, this is where he gets the permission to go ahead. It is Hakadosh Baruch Hu who has sentenced everybody who has already done this or will want to do it. Right? So they are sentenced. These people are already sentenced. So there is no need to go to court because the trial and the sentence has been brought down by Nebuah. That saying that, what it means is, tomorrow in the name of religion, if I say I want to be zealous and I want to, all those who are not wanting to, observe are immoral or whatever, can I go out killing these guys? No, I can't. Then you cannot start a ISIS kind of a organization in the name of God and do such things. It is not permitted. Okay, so there is no such idea that can be learned from here. Very, very clear. It cannot be learned from here that you can go and kill people because they are not following God or whatever. Yeah. But the second thing, anger, and we have to look at it in the same light as we looked at the other ideas that we discussed. The instincts, the animal instinct, how it has to be raised up, how it has to be sanctified. By sanctifying the animal instinct is the way of bringing the Shekinah down or bringing Kedusha to this world, right? If that is the case, one of the biggest animalistic, I won't say animalistic, but base instincts in our behavior, in human behavior, I don't know if animals get angry, but animals are very passionate, and that energy, or whenever they are, in a fight they become very aggressive and very cruel, right? That is a need to save their lives, and that's why that particular aspect is in human nature also, because we inherited from the animals the qualities. So there is anger that most of the time our egos, when it is hurt, when the ego is hurt or something is not done according to your will, according to your wish, and you know that you can uh, you know, sort of burn the bridge with the other person, whoever was responsible to sort of go against your wishes, you can decide to get angry. You don't really decide to get angry, you allow yourself to get angry, right? Why? Because you know that you're in a position where you can be angry. Like if you are sitting in front of the Prime Minister of India, however, so you may be against him, or any Prime Minister for that matter. In your ideology, if you're sitting with him, you won't get angry because you know the consequences, right? You know the consequences. You won't allow yourself to get angry with somebody who is in power or who has a certain way that can influence you negatively. So with whom will you allow yourself to be angry? With people who you can afford to be angry with. So why do you get angry? One, you get angry because you want to sort of embellish your ego. You want to solidify your wish and your will and your desires, right? Sometimes, and this is what we want to learn from here, your ego is subservient to something higher. And when you allow your ego to get diminished and be subservient to something higher, in this case it is God's will, then that anger is to some extent not because you want to embellish your ego, not because you want to fuel your ego and your ideas, but it is because you want to see to it that whatever you're subservient to, that cause is important. Right? Most of the time, it is also twisted. Like every religious person will want to attach. I'm not talking about only Judaism. Any religion, they will sort of uh, identify themselves with the religion, and then their ego is also their religion. So I am Indian. It could not necessarily be religion. It could be your identity with your land, your identity with your particular, college or school or city or planet or whatever you identify yourself with. Really, it becomes a part of your ego. And then when you are, for that cause you are doing it, it is really for your ego. So it is a very, very delicate line. But there may be times, like in the time of Pinchas, it is not that his ego was involved. The spur of the moment, it was not an ideology. That idea was also not there, that it is something that he was identifying with. Then that anger, when it happens for that particular cause, and the cause is beyond his ego and beyond his personal gain, then it is called passion, and then it is permitted. I hope I'm able to set the difference between the two, but it is a very delicate line. Sometimes we think we are doing it for a bigger cause, but that cause is really identified with our egos, and then it is the same game. Then you cannot go beyond your ego because of that particular aspect. But in this case, he did. Sometimes you can very passionately speak about something which is wrong, something which is unrighteous and things like that. Not because you align yourself with it, but just because you're understanding that that is causing somebody else, hurting somebody else or causing somebody else pain or whatever it may be, right? Not because you are aligned with it. And then it is okay to express your, then it is in fact rewarded. That is what the Torah is saying. When you can channelize that aspect, which is a base aspect, anger, and raise it up for the right cause. Like Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, for example, was an Egyptian. His interest lies in the benefit of how he will deal with Pharaoh and the gang, so that he is, he was like a prince in Egypt, right? And suddenly he finds that something is unrighteous, and there are two people fighting, and this guy should not have hit him. And he, out of his passionate anger, he kills that Egyptian. It was not because he aligned himself at that point with the Hebrews. He didn't, right? It was just because he went out beyond his passion of beyond his identity of being an Egyptian, and could stand and see that this is something that is wrong and that has to be punished. So his anger could flare up, and that is given credit in Torah. And only Yaakov Avinu, he goes out over there and he sees that these guys are not behaving properly with the ladies over there at the well. So he goes and sets it straight. He opens the well for them, right? So that is where he doesn't have any personal interest in it. He is not identified with it. It is because it is the right thing to do. And that is how anger should be raised, where you can be passionate about things that you don't benefit from and you don't build your ego from. Okay, so that is what I think is the differentiating line between regular anger and anger in this particular case. Any questions up to here? How are we doing? We are 6 o'clock. Okay. No questions? So after this, we have the section where Moshe Rabbeinu is asked to take a census, or rather, let's see what is there after here. So we have parashat pinchas, and we were talking about this pact of peace and the priesthood. So I believe that, and I may be wrong, but I believe that all the whole family of Aaron were to be priests, and they became priests. So what happened over here? I grant him my pact of peace. What is this pact of peace? Is if we see that the Kohen HaGadol, what was his role? The Kohen HaGadol's role was to bring peace between humanity and God. And they were the conduits between Am Israel and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to bring peace. What do we go to all the sacrifices and everything was so that we sort of, there is an imbalance that is created because of our actions, because of the different sins or inadvertent sins that are committed by Am Israel. And who is it that is given the role to make peace? Yom Kippur, you see the whole avodah. It is the Kohen HaGadol's role to set out, make peace. And he achieves peace for Am Israel every year. So I believe, I grant him my pact of peace is really not talking about making him a Kohen. He already was a Kohen. He and his descendants after him were supposed to be the Kohen HaGadol. So I believe after Elazar passed away, he became the Kohen HaGadol. After his father passed away, he became the Kohen HaGadol, not his other brothers. And that lineage continues up to Eli. In the book of Shmuel, it was the family, Eli was the family of Pinchas. I believe it may be mentioned also. Let's try and take a look, because I know it from another source, but I'll just see what we have in Samuel. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Does it say anything about Eli's family? No, it doesn't really.
One of Eli's
I'm reading Shmuel, and in Shmuel it just says that it was Eli who was the Kohen HaGadol, and Hophni and Pinchas were his two sons.
So his son's name was also Pinchas.
Hophni. Eli's one of Eli's son name was Pinchas. That's correct. Now I have a rabbi whose name is Rabbi Tawil, Raphael Tawil, and he is a Kohen. And when he goes on the Torah, I used to be I'm witness to this in the yeshiva when he went to take a beracha, right? So they call themselves, because they have the lineage, the Kohen Bet Eli Ben Pinchas. So they are the descendants of Pinchas, and Eli was lineage of Pinchas, but Eli at the time of Shmuel lost the ark. Eli dies and his sons lose the position because of their corruption, and they are punished. So the high priesthood went away from the house of Pinchas at the time of Shmuel. When King David re-established it, he established a different house. He didn't establish Eli's house. And only later, in the times of Mashiach, we are again going to see Pinchas's house being re-established. So this pact of peace is really a pact where he was promised that till the temple stood, he was the Kohen HaGadol. Okay, that is a side point, but again, this is something that I am linking with my rabbi's relationship with the house of Eli.
Can I say something?
Yes, uncle, please go ahead.
I think,
Amen.
I think all these things happened in the Midbar. And Eli is after we are occupied Canaan, there he was there. This Eli is different than the Eli, the Pinchas in the Midbar. Son of the Eli is after occupied. There Samuel is there. And this is different stories. This story and the story of the Midbar. There is two stories at Balawate. This Pinchas is correct. He was the head of the Rab. About this Eli is different and that Eli is different. I think, I don't know, because I cannot tell you exactly.
No, you're right. You're right. They're different, but it's the same family, I'm saying. Because
it is not
my
the same
rabbi
family.
has a tradition. My rabbi has a tradition of calling himself Kohen from the house of Eli, from the house of Pinchas, not Pinchas like the son of Eli. Pinchas as the first, or Ben Elazar, Pinchas Ben Elazar, the Pinchas we are talking about, right? Because he has a tradition, a live tradition, which is passed on from father to son for the last 3,000 years. Yes, we can say that at some point, how did Eli become the how did Eli become the let me explain this. Who becomes the Kohen Gadol? The eldest son. The eldest son has to become the Kohen Gadol, right? Elazar's eldest son was not Pinchas. So how would the Kohen Gadol's title end up in the family of Eli, who is from the house of Pinchas? That is the question. Okay. So the only way it could end up in his family is because over here he was granted the title of being, or the ability of being a Kohen Gadol, which otherwise he would never have received because of not being the firstborn. So Pinchas would never have been the Kohen Gadol, and through his lineage, Eli would never have been a Kohen Gadol if this would not have happened. Okay, so from what I'm reading it from the other end. Now that I know that there is a family of Tawil who call themselves Tawil ben Eli ben Pinchas, I know that there must have been a reason why Pinchas became the Kohen Gadol. And that's how the reason has to be that this pact of Shalom. And Shalom really is because the Kohen Gadol brings Shalom between Am Israel and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? Is that clearer, Uncle, now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Fine. Shall we move on? Try to next 25 minutes quickly pack a little more ideas over here. So there is one more story. After there is this lineage. There is another count over here. The count is for a simple reason. Am Israel is going to enter the land of Israel, and Hashem says that you will. I mean, this is the next generation. So this is according to the families of people who walked out of Egypt and their descendants. All of them have died. Who are remaining are just two people. Who are the two? Joshua and Caleb. Caleb ben Yefuneh, the two spies who stood for Am Israel to enter into the land of Israel. They were the ones who went into Israel. Everybody else died. So now we have the next generation, and the lineage or the census is taken for the next generation, so that they will apportion the land according to the tribes of the people who are now going to enter Israel. That we have jumped over that section. But what happens is there is a family, and we'll read about this family. The name of the Israelite who was killed, the one who was killed with the Midian. We didn't really read this. We'll quickly read this. The name of the Israelite who was killed, the one who was killed with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, son of Salu, chieftain of the Shimonite ancestral house. The name of the Midianite woman who was killed was Cosbi, daughter of Sur. She was the tribal head of, Sur was the tribal head of an ancestral house in Midian. So again, one question I asked earlier, what was it that he brought this woman? This woman is a princess. She comes from an important family from Midian, right? So from here you see that the Midianites were so much invested in bringing Israel down that they didn't send some, harlots from the neighboring whatever red light area. They sent their princesses. That is weird, isn't it? Or it could be that she was not really an harlot. She was a princess, and this fellow wanted to marry her. And in the olden times, to set relationship with important princes and princesses was a way of making peace. That's again going back to King Solomon. That's one reason why he married all the princesses of all his neighbors, so that he can really not have wars with them. Their daughter was his wife, so why would they make war with him? That is how the old politics used to work. Okay. Anyway, so maybe that was the reason that he brought her in, that they wanted to somehow make a relationship with Am Israel. But either way, that he walked in over here with Cosby, daughter of Sur, tribal head of ancestral house in Midian. They both got killed. And that's why Hashem tells them, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, assail. The word assail is to harass the Midianites, assail the Midianites and defeat them, for they have harassed you. Again, the same word. By the trickery they practice against you. Because of the affair of Peor, that is Baal Peor, and because of the affair of the king's woman, Cosby, daughter of Midianite chieftain, who was killed at the time of the plague on account of the Peor. Because of this lady who came in and tried to show off, sort of, doesn't the whole trickery that they use to bring you down from your state of holiness, that I had to bring a plague, because you are with the Shekhinah and you do something not holy, it is going to hurt you. So they played a trick with you. Whose idea was that? We spoke, it was the Bilam's idea. So that's why, like in the first case, when Amalek came and attacked you, you had to go back and hit back on and finish Amalek. Similarly over here, because they did this with you and they played around with your Kedusha, with your level and your relationship with me, I will want you to go and destroy them. Okay, but this is what we were talking about. The daughters of Slofchad of Menashite family, Menashe, son of Yosef, right? Son of Hefer, son of Gilad, son of Machir, son of Menashe, son of Yosef, came forward. So important family, Yosef's family, his daughters of Slofchad came forward. The name of the daughters were Mahla, Noah, Hogla, Milka, and Tirsa. Their name is also, the Torah thinks it's important to mention their names. They stood before Moses, Lazar the priest, the chieftains, and the whole assembly at the entrance of the tent of meeting. How democratic the whole thing, and the ladies could come and stand, get justice. And they said, our father died in the wilderness. He was not one of the faction, Korah's faction, which banded together against the Lord, but died for his own sin. And he has left no sons. So our father died a normal death. We don't know why he died. He died for his own sins. He has no sons. We are his daughters. We left Egypt, or we were born on the way en route. He left Egypt and he has passed on. Let not our father's name be lost to his clan, just because he has no son. Give us a holding among our father's kinsmen. Well, why? He came out of Egypt. Okay, fine. So he's alive, not alive. But why should he lose out on his family, ancestral property? Everybody who came out of Egypt, their sons are going to inherit, except for the people who are in the Korah gang and stuff like that, who are punished. Maybe they will not get. But what about him? He didn't go against Hashem or whatever. So give us a holding among our father's kinsmen. Moses brought their case before the Lord. Moses asked Hashem what to do. And the Lord said to Moses, the plea of Lophad's daughter is just. You should give them a hereditary holding among their father's kinsmen, transfer their father's share to them. So over here, Hashem tells Moshe that it's okay. What they are asking for is right. Women normally don't inherit because it is always from the male side of the family that they inherit property. But in this case, it is different. All those in Am Israel who do not have a brother and their parents have died, right, should get an inheritance and transfer the father's share to them. So they asked for something and they were given. They were righteous and they were given of their father's share. Now, Torah thinks that this is a good example that has to be brought into very short, history of 40 years that we have, Book of Devari, Bamidbar. But this is here. This is an important event, right? Now, later on, we will see that these ladies were asked to marry from the same tribe so that the land cannot be transferred to a different tribe. So they married their cousins or whatever from the same family of Menashe. That's how their ancestral property remained in their holding. But this is an important story. What is the takeaway of this story? What is the takeaway? What would you say? If you wanted to underline some ideas here that are important that the Torah, because the Torah decided to bring it down, what is it that you would like to?
Their daughters also can inherit the property.
Yes.
Because here he didn't have any sons, so the daughters are there. So they can. Daughters are also important for the family.
Right. I think that you're right, Ashley. But I'm trying to get a little bit deeper. I think that sometimes, because the Torah works with a reality already in place, right? The reality in place over here was that it is a patriarchal community, right? The male-oriented community. If that is the case, that is the reality Torah is working with, and that is the framework it is using for distributing land. But sometimes, because of that, there may be issues that may not be fair, right? Because of existing preconceived notions, or we are not walking into a vacuum, right? There is some input that is happening from earlier generations, and right. So the point over here is Torah is malleable. Torah cannot be changed, but Torah can be interpreted. Torah can be understood. That is the whole basis for the whole oral Torah. How is the oral Torah understood and learned out? It's because Torah is malleable. Torah can be reinvented according to the needs of the demands of the times that it is being. For example, today, just recently, or I think today and 2 days ago, we opened an embassy in UAE. We opened an embassy in Muslim right? Dubai, right? Who would have imagined that this would have happened, right? But in our times, we can see that the times are changing. There is no precedent for this to happen. Never has history from Ishmael till today. There may have been times like Rambam, Moshe ben Maimonides was a doctor to the king of Egypt, and even other Abarbanel was a prime minister to a Muslim king. So there were times that we had good relationship, but in our recent memory, we never knew that this is even possible. But realities do change, and with this, we need to be ready how to reinterpret halakha. There is a very interesting book by, again, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs about why it is important on the religious community, incumbent upon them to adjust these old value systems so that we will be able to usher in peace. It's a very, very important idea, because a lot of times unknowingly we talk about, we are the Jews and they are the non-Jews and they are the whatever, we may not even intend it, but decide, because whatever Bilam or Balak and Amalek and the gang, however they lived their lives and whatever they did against Am Israel, we can decide that even today, every other community apart from Jews are following the same patterns or whatever, which is wrong, right? So we need to be very aware and be very responsible how we do not allow the impressions of the past to set into our reality. And this is a very good example. The patriarchal community system, which was what they knew. That is all that they knew. But you had to look at it afresh and see that at that particular moment it was against these girls, and it had to be. So Moshe also doesn't know. Moshe brings the case in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem teaches him that this is how it has to be. Okay, I think that's another idea to think about, a very important idea that, for that matter. So here you have a continuity of that. Further speak to the Israelite people as follows. If a man dies without leaving a son, you shall transfer his property to his daughter. If he has no daughter, you shall assign his property to his brothers. If he has no brothers, you shall assign his property to his father's brothers. If his father has no brothers, you shall assign his property to his nearest relative in his own clan, and he shall inherit it. This shall be a law of procedure for the Israelites in accordance with the Lord's command to Moshe. So you see, from that one question that these girls asked, there is a whole incident where a halacha is given to Moshe, that this is how inheritance will happen. If somebody passes away, his sons get it. If no sons, daughters get it. If no daughters and no sons, brothers get it. If no brothers, cousins get it. But his name in the property remains. The Lord said to Moses, ascend these heights to Abarim. Okay, so I will have about 10 minutes. I may be going a little overboard over here, but I just wanted to bring another idea, the land of Israel itself, right? In our understanding, land is land. It is a piece of property. We just work it and it is a way of supporting ourselves. But land of Israel is different. According to Torah understanding, the land of Israel is so important that we have a share in it, that it is just as if it is, there are three things. There's the land, there is us, and there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the triangle that really the Torah in our understanding of how Gan Eden is re-established with Am Israel. This is it. That's why the land is so much important. It is like Gan Eden. We have to raise it, and Hashem has raised the consciousness of the land, sort of the aspect of holiness that the land has, and that's why we are supposed to relate with it with a very different consciousness, with a different relationship. So we have a relationship with Hashem, and we have a relationship with the land, and it's not just by fluke that we were able to establish Eretz Israel today after 2000 plus years of exile. We prayed for it 3 times a day. We craved for it every time we sat for the Passover. Say that it was next year in Yerushalayim. know, the consciousness, the Jewish consciousness, has these two aspects imprinted in Hashem and the land. And that's why it was so important. And here you see that these girls went out of their way to go and ask Moshe and the leaders with him that this cannot be, that we won't inherit a property that should belong to our fathers, because it is imprinted. All those souls that walked out of Egypt, they have a share in the land automatically. Okay, so that has to be understood, and we have to just uncover that hole sort of inside our hearts, our love for the land. It is more than, it's not just the love that comes out of your head. It is something more basic in the Jewish consciousness. It is like Torah. The Torah can, a lot of times the sages teach us that the Torah, which is observed on Eretz Israel, has a totally different level. So this is again an invitation for everybody who are sitting there back in India. Next flight, whenever it starts, hop on and come to Eretz Israel. This is the real thing. And everything is changing over here, and we are in the times of all the prophecies becoming true. Okay. Anyway, so the last aspect that I'll speak about, the Lord said to Moses, ascend these heights of Abarim, and view the land that I have given to the Israelite people. When you have seen it, you shall be gathered to your kin, just as your brother Aaron was. So at this point, when it's talking about land has to be distributed and everything, Moshe, you're not going in. Hashem reminds him, but I want you to go and see this beautiful land from this mountain top, Mount Abarim. And then again, it tells or reminds Moshe, for in the wilderness of sin, when the community was contentious, you disobeyed my command to uphold my sanctity in their sight by means of waters. Those are the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of sin. So we remember we discussed this last time. Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, let the Lord, source of breath of all flesh, appoint somebody over the community who shall go out before them and come in before them, who shall take them out and bring them in, so that the Lord's community may not be like sheep that have no shepherd. So Moshe immediately, Hashem tells him, go up. He hears, okay, I am going to move on, but what about Am Israel? So as a leader, you see Moshe Rabbeinu's concern and love for his people. He doesn't want to take any chances. What about continuity of leadership with Am Israel? And the Lord answered Moses, single out Joshua, son of Nun, an inspired man, and lay your hands upon him. Have him stand before Eleazar the priest and before the whole community, and commission him in their sight. Invest him with some of your authority, so that whole Israelite community may obey. So it's not authority, it's hod. It is translated as authority. It is something about his I don't know how to, hod is influence.
The
About
Moses
his
power.
influence, his authority, okay. But he shall present himself to Eleazar the priest, who shall on his behalf seek the decision on the Urim before the Lord. By such instructions they shall go out, and by such instructions they shall come in, he and all the Israelites, the whole community. So again, it gives an idea of what are the Urim and Thummim, and how only the leaders of the community were supposed to consult the Urim. It was Yehoshua, son of Nun, who was now supposed to take Moshe's place to do that. Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Yehoshua and had him stand before Eleazar the priest and before the community. He laid his hands upon him and commissioned him as the Lord had spoken through Moses. So that's how Yehoshua becomes a the next leader. My question, quick question is there some link with the stories that we just read? They talk about the theme according to Rabbi Foreman. By Foreman, yeah. There is a very subtle link with all the stories that we spoke about. I'll remind you what did we speak about. The first story we spoke about was the story of Pinchas and the priesthood, or his Kohen HaGadol status and his covenant of peace. The second story that we spoke about was the story of Slofhad, daughter who question or who request for land. The third story we spoke about was Yoshua becoming king or becoming the leader in being instructed to be leader, and Moshe Rabbeinu sort of empowering him. Is there some link, or is there any connection between these ideas, or they are just haphazard? 1 minute to think about it. Anybody would like to try? There is something about all three aspects that sort of move from one generation to the next. If you see about it, it is the Brit Shalom that he and his descendants were supposed to get for eternity, right? Then you see the land is a hereditary position for eternity. And the last one is Moshe instructing Yoshua, and that somebody else will be commissioned in his place after Yoshua's time, so that there will be a continuous leadership position in Am Israel, right? And if you open the book of in our Siddur, there is a section after Shabbat. You will see a little after Shabbat, Mosai Shabbat, called Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot is a part of Mishnah Avot, and the beginning of Pirkei Avot brings you a chain of tradition from Moshe to person who collected all these Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. He collected all the Mishnayot and got them together. So you will see a chain tradition of what I'm talking about in that book that has been preserved. Okay, so there is something which is hereditary, and which you can call as a legacy. You know, a legacy is the word that Rabbi Foreman uses, and even Rabbi Jonathan Sachs uses, that something you invest in and keep it for your next generation. So you, as the Kohanim and the Kohen Gadol, you know, that is inheritance which works according to your lineage. Nobody else can become a Kohen Gadol. or even a Kohen. Only the family of Aaron and only the family of Pinchas till Eli, and later on whoever was installed by King David or King Solomon. They were the Kohen Gadol, but it is a legacy that continued, right? Similarly, Am Yisrael had the land, which was their legacy. That's why you see Boaz and other stories where they will see to it that the land is not lost. The land is brought back for their family and ancestral. Now we don't have that, unfortunately, but soon again we will own the land and it will be ours once the Mashiach is here. But even before the Mashiach is here, we'll all get ready with the land and everything for the Mashiach. And it's not far away. The third legacy is not hereditary, and that is why it is important to bring it up. The third legacy, in fact, there are a lot of midrashim which talk about that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was suggesting to God, select a shepherd, was thinking about his sons. We really don't know. But knowing Moshe, I would say that when you have oral tradition, the oral tradition is taught, reading into it the human consciousness, and wants you to learn how human consciousness or human conditioning works. So it will even say with Moshe Rabbeinu that, like all humans, he will think like all humans. I would like my son to inherit my position, right? But I think Moshe Rabbeinu was beyond that, and you see, certainly once he is told to bless Joshua, we have a line over here which proves this point. Single out Joshua, son of Nun, as an inspired, and lay your hand upon him. Lay your hand upon him. What does Hashem says? Lay your hand upon Moshe. What does Moshe do? Last line. He lays his hands upon him and commissioned him. So he goes out of his way, not only one hand, both his hands, with all his might, with all his blessings. He blesses. He didn't have any reservations. Moshe Rabbeinu, from that one word, our tradition tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu fulfills the demand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes on him with all his heart. He doesn't have any. So it was not probably Moshe Rabbeinu thinking that he wants his sons or whatever, but that's natural, right? So you would think that Moshe will also think my son should get this position, but Hashem is very clear. Torah, or the leadership which represents the lineage of Torah, does not happen hereditarily. It is not because you were born in a certain family or you were a son of certain important figures that you inherited. It is because you are capable. You have the capacity for it, and only then you can live to it. And that crown of Torah, is available to everybody. Anybody can decide that he wants to be like Moshe Rabbeinu and start understanding Torah and growing in it. It is available to him. So there are some areas which are, some legacies which are hereditary, some legacies which are, like we say in Hashem Emet, Moshe Emet, Torah to Emet, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem Emet, וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל, תורה ציווה לנו Moshe, Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. It is a Morasha, it is the inheritance of Kehilat Yaakov, the congregation of Yaakov. It is our inheritance, all of us. It is not limited by hereditary or family traditions. We see that Moshe's children really are not inherited. They didn't inherit any office, and it was maybe for Moshe a difficult thing, but that's the fact. Okay. Any questions?
Torah Shivalan. Torah Shiva Lanu Bechol Zot. It is written that Torah is correct and Moshe is correct. एकदम perfect है थी. Moshe emet, Torah to emet. Bechol, even though we are hearing the Rabbanim, why don't I don't understand?
What you don't understand?
Why we hear the Rabbanim when it is written? Moshe, what is said and what is writing is correct, and what is written in the Torah is correct. Then Rabbanim says Sarah is not the sister, he is the cousin. Hagar is not his wife, he is a Keturah, and Hagar is all this. The Rabbanims are saying. I don't know. We are hearing.
Okay.
To whom we must hear? The Rabbani was the Torah, which is written. Keturah, chapter 25 in the Genesis is right. Abraham Avinu taken the wife named Keturah. Then also we are hearing, we are saying the Keturah and Hagar and the Uttadavar. I don't know. I don't agree. Keturah and Hagar are both the same. I don't agree.
So let us ask ourselves one single question, one simple question. What is Torah? Torah is history or Torah is something else?
Even it is history, but it is written. What is the written in the Torah is correct. It is written like that. This history is correct. Torah emet, Moshe emet.
So what happens when you find in Torah two different traditions?
No, different traditions, the Rabbanis bring them.
No. I am saying I will show you in the Torah. Say, I will show you. If I show you in the Torah two different traditions, I will show you there is the lineage of Abraham Avinu, right? Abraham Avinu, his father, his great grandfather, they were in the book of Bereshit, there were 10 descendants from Noah. And in the book of Chronicles, I will show you that there are 13 descendants to Noah. I will show you. Both our traditions are brought down.
But both are the correct, but
both are, how can both be correct? Either he had 10 forefathers or he had 13 forefathers. How can both be correct?
In the Bible, it is correct.
Now that's my question. So how do you say it is correct? Because the Bible is giving me this also and this also. So Bible is not history. First of all, you have to get your idea that Bible is a history book out. The reason somebody compiled them together with one, what have been, if you go back, you have been in the class for the past year and a half now, right? You see what one of my techniques when I'm teaching Torah is bringing a Torah and bringing another piece of Torah and contradicting it, isn't it? Most of the times that is how I introduce a topic, by bringing a piece of Torah and contradicting it and trying to make sense. So if I say it is a history book, then I cannot do that. Why can't I do that? Because history is history. It is black and white. Something happened and something didn't happen. Torah is not a history book. Torah is something beyond history. It is using history as you use a jumping board to jump into the sea or jump into the swimming pool. So you want to go as deep down to get the pearls. So what do? You use a jumping board to go deeper and deeper. Similarly, Torah is using history as the jumping board. Think about it like this. The Hakamim don't understand Torah as you understand it, that this is just black and white history book. That history book is something else. It is not necessary to have history some of the times. What would it help if you don't learn from it? So how do I learn from history? By using different techniques that is going to speak to me. If I allow history to speak to me, then, like for example, we just were speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu. Did really Moshe Rabbeinu think about his son to be installed in his place? Do we know? We cannot know. Torah talks about it. Torah doesn't talk about it. Does the Midrash say so? The Midrash says. Why? As I told you, the Midrash says because the Torah wants to teach you human nature, how you are conditioned, what is your system of your ego is going to do. Where do I learn that? I don't have a psychology handbook. When 3,000 years ago, I was learning Torah, how to be a spiritual giant. That is what the Torah is about. If you want to be a spiritual giant, you need to know about human psychology. Now, Torah doesn't use that jargon that Freud and the gang use. It doesn't. It uses these things. It uses Torah. I mean the Hachamim who are teaching the Torah will use a point over here and make a midrash out of it. The midrash is supposed to get you inside that depth of psychology where you will be able to understand yourself. That is Torah. Torah about history. Do I need a history book? That is what Torah Hashem gave me, a history of 3,000 years. No, that is just the jumping board that he gave me. What is the emet in it? When there are two conflicting things, this is not emet because this contradicts it, and this is not emet because this contradicts it. How could it be emet? So you have to redefine your understanding of Torah, because the Torah itself contradicts itself. The first chapter of Torah contradicts itself with the second chapter of Torah. We studied it. How can it be history? It is not history. Immediately on the second chapter of Torah you read, you know it is not talking about history. It is not talking about days. It is not talking about seven days of creation. It is not talking about humanity as we understand it. It is talking about something else. Once you realize that something else is emet, so then you can break your understanding as reality. There is a reality and there is truth. Sometimes reality and truth match. Sometimes reality and truth doesn't match. Let's keep it at that. We have to bring our reality and match it with the truth. The truth of Hakadosh Baruch Hu's intentions, the truth of Hakadosh Baruch Hu's creation is there, but it is not clear. The Torah wants to make it clear to us so that we will be able to match our reality with the truth. And that is what the whole endeavor is all about. See, our tradition is just one small tradition among so many other traditions that come out of the Torah. You know, the Torah, our tradition is called the Pharisee, Perushim. They were the Yohanan ben Zakkai and all the descendants, or really the students of that way of interpreting Torah. That is the only way that really lived out till today. There were so many other different ways how the Torah was traditionally transmitted. You must have gone to the Israel Museum in Israel. You will see that there were men of light and men of darkness, and how that they have all these traditions where these books were found. These traditions have been, these people have been lost, but the traditions have been kept in old books and old archaic scriptures and everything, where there were different traditions, how Torah was interpreted and what Torah was. But we have the descendants or the students of the Perushim, of the Pharisaic way of understanding it. That is all. But that really doesn't mean that Torah is true or false in terms of history. It is about how Torah can be understood for what that truth is. I hope I am making sense. But
No, you are making sense. Even though what is written in the Torah, when we finish the prayers, at the end we read.
Uncle, you have to speak a little louder. I can't hear you.
When we read the prayers, now you hear me?
Yes, I
when
can
you
hear you.
read the prayer, at the end we read something else. Alinule sabbe akhlazon. In that chapter, it is very nicely written. Right? When every word we think about the God of you Jews, there will be a peace.
Okay.
And now you think what is happening. Now the Muslims started believing the God of the Jews.
Okay.
We are cursing the Ismailim, but Ismailim had done very nice work.
Okay.
They have changed everyone into Muslimim. Now these are Muslims. After 100 years or 200 or 300 years, they will believe the God of the Jews, the Ben Israel.
Okay.
Followed? म्हणजे काय जे लिहिलं आहे आलेले सभ्य it comes to it will become true.
Yes. Yes.
This is the work of the God. But we
Certainly.
are cursing the Ismailim. We are cursing now.
Unfortunately,
God,
yes. Yes, unfortunately, because of the war, because of the situation.
now we are cursing, but it is his work. He knows what is doing it.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Iran, Baga, Iraq, Iraq, everywhere they were the idol workers. Now all those the people are turned out to be the Muslims, and
That's
all
right.
these Muslims we believe it will be Israel.
It's easier for them to understand the God of Jews.
Exactly.
No? Yes, you're right.
This is the work of the God. That is what I'm saying.
Correct.
Then also he said, keep hand on the Yoshua and say he is the leader. It is not once, it is returned once not. Jacob, David, Abraham Abin also said to Ismail, you keep your hand under my thighs and pray, say that I will bring the correct girl. Jacob Abin also says, his son, Yosef, keep your hand under my arms and say that you will bury me in this. These things joining that you want to give anybody barakah or anything, you keep your hand and hold his hand and say the barakah. Even if you are saying the Mishnah barakah, you should hold his hand, not just saying. This is the thing is there in that.
Okay. We have a lot of topics that have to be discussed. Let's keep it to our discussion. If anybody has questions to parashat Pinchas that we discussed, some ideas that they want to share. Okay then. Shabbat Shalom and Borak. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Last question.
Yes, Jeremiah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Just one question.
Yes,
Jeremiah.
We said about inheritance in the end. You told inheritance, like inheritance of Kohen, inheritance of the land, and inheritance from Joshua to from Moshe to Joshua. What about the inheritance of kingship?
We still don't have one kingship, but Joshua's inheritance is kingship really. Moshe Rabbeinu. See, there are two different things happening over here.
Where is Torah?
There are two different things happening here with rolled into one. Moshe Rabbeinu was also the king, and Moshe Rabbeinu was also the prophet. Really, the king aspect of him was then given to Yehuda with David. But the prophet aspect of it, which was inherited by Joshua, is open to anybody. That's why even ladies can become prophets. You know, that is not limited by hereditary. So you are right. Kingship at some point will become hereditary once it is separated from the just now at this minute when Moshe is transmitting it to Joshua, it is rolled into one. They are also the kings and also the prophets. But at a later stage in history, that separates, and again kingship becomes hereditary. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question. Last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
2000 years ago, we ruled on Canaan. How many years we ruled in the Canaan? 2000 years ago.
Well, how many years did we rule in Canaan? 3,300 years ago, we got the Torah. As 3,300
No,
years
we got
ago.
the Torah in Midbar.
Yeah,
When
so I'm just telling you, 3,300 years ago, we got the Torah.
1,000 years.
3,260 years ago, we walked into Israel. 3,260 years ago, we walked into Israel. Okay. Then from there was a period of judges. Last judge was Samuel, who set up Saul as the king. Saul was demoted, and in his place, David became the king. David's son, Solomon, built the temple. The temple was built in 1000 BCE.
It
1000 BC.
is written in the Bible 450 years after leaving the Misraim. It is written this way.
1000 BCE is when the temple is built. So today is 2021. No, so 3021 years ago. 3021 years ago. 3021 years ago, the temple was built. We walked into Israel 3,260 years ago. So for 240 years, you have the period of judges. 240 years, more or less. Period of judges, Saul plus David. All that happened in 240 years. Okay?
As my knowledge, माझ्या वाचना, for my reading, Bible मध्ये लिहिल्याप्रमाणे 450 years we ruled, and in these 250 years there were kings. 250 years there were kings, and 200 years there was no kings. From Joshua till the Shaul,
if you
there
knew
was
the answer,
no
why
king.
did you ask the question? You want to say something else about the question?
No, I wanted to get sure.
But it is not right.
What is not right? You read in the Bible. It is written in the Bible. 450 years we ruled.
The two temples.
No, let us ask him what he is saying. What is not right?
There are two temples who are standing for period of 1,000, almost 1,000.
We left Israel when the temple was not built. We take this in the mind first and foremost. Because the time of Shaul, and Shaul did not build the temple.
Jeremiah, but why are you rejecting uncle's? I don't have the figures here. The way he is saying it,
No.
Can you understand the dates from it? So why are you rejecting it?
No, I'm not rejecting.
No, he's not rejecting. He's just arguing. He's not rejecting. He's not rejecting. He's just arguing. It's all right.
I don't know.
Arguing is rejecting, no.
No.
Yes.
Arguing is learning.
Hold on.
When you argue, you learn something else.
I'll just pull out one book which will give us the dates properly. Let me see if it is here.
Yes. मी 450 वर्ष बोललाय, आता तुम्ही बघा काय लिहिलंय ते.
अरे पण तो 450 जास्ती तर पहिला टेम्पल होता.
नाही काय तुम्ही टेम्पलची बात कुठं करता हो? योशुआच्या नंतर, शाऊलच्या नंतर, दावीदच्या नंतर शिलोमोनी बांधलाय. लक्षात ठेवा.
हा, तर मिशकानचा टाइम बघा ना, मिशकान किती वर्ष होता?
नाही, मिशकानची बात नाही. मिशकान तर होताच त्या टायमाला पण तो त्या कोणी शाऊलने आणलेला आहे संगती, अजून बांधलेला नाही का, मशिदी ठेवलेला नाही.
हा, तो मिशकान होता बेतेलला.
हा, मिशकानला होता, बेतेलला सगळं का होता काय, पण मशीद नव्हती.
मग श्लोमो राजानी बांधला.
शलोमो राजांनी 4,450 वर्ष आफ्टर लिव्हिंग द मिस्राईम, असं काय, आता मी विसरलो एक्झॅक्ट टाइम कधी. लिव्हिंग द मिस्राईम तिकडून त्यांनी टाइम घेतलाय, तिथून त्यांनी सुरुवात केलंय मशीद बांधायची.
हा, तुम्ही मशीदची टाइम विचारता?
પછી સુરત કદી के लिए बांधा थी?
Okay, you guys are ready? All those who have a pen and a paper can jot it down. Let me read it out to you. This is according to the historic version. In Yediot Aharonot, one of the newspapers in Israel, Yediot Aharonot has brought out this very nice book called Talmud Israeli for children. So in the beginning of the book, they give a timeline. Okay. So we'll talk in our CE English date. Is that okay?
Okay. Christian era.
English.
Sí.
Yetziat Mitzrayim 1312. 1312. According to this, okay, I don't agree with these dates.
I too don't agree.
I don't agree with these dates.
I too don't agree.
According to see how they have re-established these dates is they have calculated it backwards. Whatever dates were written, so they have calculated, but it is pretty fine because Yetziat Mitzrayim, the date of Yetziat Mitzrayim exactly, we can know from archaeological proofs. Okay, and we need to re-establish that. But forget Yetziat Mitzrayim. The only problem is we don't know how much period of judges was there. That is the only problem that happens because we know exactly when King Solomon established the temple and when he was ruling and King David was ruling. We know that. We know those dates for a certainty. Okay. So the earlier time of judges is a little more longer than it is otherwise. Okay. David HaMelech was in 877. King David. Malchut Shlomo was 836. And Hanukat Bet HaMikdash HaRishon was, I said 1000, but it is 826. Okay? 826.
Why I'm arguing, I should read once again. I read it once again.
Please write it down, uncle. Please write it down. Then afterwards you can calculate. Next class you can bring it up, whatever is not fitting your calculation.
Oh, tell me, when he started building the temple, 1000?
When he started, we don't know. 826 was when the temple was inaugurated.
Inaugurated. It takes some. Started nailile.
Really?
It is in the Bible. It is written. In the Bible, it is written when he started.
826 to 795. That is the period where it says Hanukat Bet HaMikdash HaRishon. So it could be over a period of 40 years, whatever. So 800, you take 800 as a average. 800 year 800 minus 800, that is BCE, is when the temple was established. Okay, I said 1000, but it is 800 according to this calculation. And this is more authentic in terms of from the time of the kings till now, everything is very, very accurate on this. You will get Eliyahu Hanavi in that period from 800 to 795. So he is in the period of the first Beth HaMikdash, but he is in the northern kingdoms. Then the things are divided. We will want to jump now to Horban Bait Rishon, right?
Horban.
Kibush Yehuda ve Horban Yerushalayim. That is Horban Yerushalayim is 355. So if you take 350, 60, 70, 80. So 250 years, 245 years, the temple stood. 250 years the temple, first temple stood 250 years or 45 years, whatever it may be. Then they built the second temple. They began building it in 352. Just after 3 years, you see, just after 3 years, they began building the second temple. 312, it was standing already. Second temple. 312. Then the second temple was destroyed.
Joshua, it was 70 years later. Jeremiah's prophecy.
Right, but 70 years later from, because 355.
And the first temple, if I'm not wrong, it was 410 years.
So yes, you are right. Kibush Yehuda, I am wrong. I'm wrong. 420 years. 420. I said 355, but it is 420.
So yes, my answer was correct.
420.
And his second temple,
the way it writes over here is its starting point and ending point. So it gives me 2 dates or 3 dates rather for everything. So Kibush Yehuda ve Korban Yerushalayim is 420. So the attack may have started 10 years ago. I don't know how bad the siege was. 410 maybe the siege was started. 420 according to this book of Yediot Aharonot. And so 70 years from then, where will you be? 420. We are bringing down the thing, right? So 350. So 352 I have. So 350, 70 years. You're right, Jerry. I have exactly 352. 312 is when really it was 100% established. They began 352, established probably 312. Korban Bet HaMikdash Sheni was 68. That is CE in our calendar CE.
Christ era.
68.
It has to be 450 years.
Common era.
430 years, second temple, right?
Now, 68 plus 312. $380 I got. How much are you saying?
430. It was 10 years more than the first one.
430. So then the beginning point is 352 and 352 plus 68. 420. You are right.
That's what I'm told. Guy, after leaving the Misraim, 420 years. After leaving the Misraim, it is written like that.
Be after leaving Misraim.
After it is written. I will find out once again. It is written black and white madi lila hai, Shastra madi. After leaving the Misraim, 420 years upon it, something like that. It is something 400 years.
What I'm trying to say is, from the building of the second temple, which was in 352, to the destruction of the second temple, which was in 68, we have 420 years. So how do you say that we have 420 years from the Yetziat Mitzrayim?
मला फक्त वाचून सांग. I will note down, and I will tell you where it is written.
Again, I will give you the dates. For those who are jotting it down, I'll give you the dates again. Below to above, we are going. 68 CE is the destruction of the second temple. 352 is the destruction or the rebuilding of the second temple. 352. Sorry, 352. Okay. 420 is when the first temple was destroyed. 420, first temple destroyed. Establishment of the first temple. Where is it? 826. 826. This is all BCE. Minus. You go back. So to answer your question, uncle, Yetziat Mitzrayim was in 1312. 1312 according to this book. 1312 plus second temple 68 years. So 1312 plus 68 is 1380 years. After Yetziat Mitzrayim, 1380 years, the second temple was destroyed. But you are saying only 420 years. That is not right.
So, building of the temple. Okay, let us see afterwards.
Okay.
आणखीन एक बारकासा क्वेश्चन म्हणजे काय माहितीये काय? It is worth hearing once. When will how many काय बोलतात त्याला public were left from Misraim? How many? 600,000 आहे ना? How many were there when we left Misraim with Moses? Something 600.
In the Torah, it is written 600,000. 600, and we have the figure in fact today. In our parashat today, we have
all right.
total.
आता तुम्हाला एक सांगतो, एक सरप्राईज ऐकायचं असेल तर. When the independence is declared 1948 मध्ये, what was the population, the Jewish population? 650. 600. बघा जी एक सेम
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Okay. Shabbat shalom mevorach lekolam.
Shabbat shalom mevorach. Okay.
Kol ma she'atem mibakshim ekadosh baruch hu. Kol ma she'atem mibakshim, whatever you are asking from the God, all your wishes be fulfilled, and God will hear your wishes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Yes.
आपला ह्या तिशा बेबला फास्ट ऑफ आहे ना, तिशा बेब वी आर इवन द कॅलेंडर मध्ये 1953 इयर्स आहेत.
1953
हा, त्याच्यावरून आपण उलटा कॅल्क्युलेट करू शकतो. आणि माझ्याकडे ते आहे थोडासा, मी पण शोधून ठेवते. देर विल डिस्कस. ओके जी, थँक्यू.
विड्याच्या दिवशी विड्डा का खातात तुम्हाला माहिती आहे?
हा, इथे मिळाला बिर्डा त्यांना.
दुसऱ्या टॉपिक मध्ये नको जायला,
पण तरी पण रफ आन्सर कोण काय बोलते मला ऐकायचं आहे. विड्या दिवशी विड्डा का खातात?
जास्त लेट झालं इंडियामध्ये. आपण आता कन्क्लूड करू, आपण पुढच्या क्लास मध्ये बघूया.
ओके, गॉड ब्लेस यू ऑल.
आमच्याकडे आता 9:15 व्हायला लागले.
हो, लेट झालं.
आमच्याकडे 9:15, 8:15, 7:15.
हा, मग 21:44, 21:45 झालं आमचं. ओके, शब्बा शलोम. हाँ, अपन डिटेल मध्ये ती बात करू नेक्स्ट टाइम व्हेन आई गेट.
हो, जरूर.
ओके, बाय जोशुआ.
थँक्यू अंकल.
हाँ, बाय.